Hello everyone, this is Prem Kumar. In the last video, we looked into different application types and the enterprise application structure. In this video, we are going to create our first new Pega application. In the real time, how do you start creating your first application is to write a high-level design for your application. The high-level design should revolve around these three basic questions. It will be like, what will be the base application? Whether I have to create a framework or an implementation application, and then I have to decide my enterprise application layer. Let's check each of the question in detail. First, what will be my base application? Let's see what are the options we get. We have three options here. You can choose Pega base product as your base application. It means if you don't want to use any other frameworks or any type of different applications, then you can use the Pega base product as a base application, and then you can implement your application over the Pega base product. The next is Pega Solutions Framework. In the last video, we looked into Pega Solutions Framework. Pega do provide a lot of solutions framework. A-Life as an insurance organization, they want to use Pega for their claims processing, and Pega Systems, they have their own solutions framework for Pega claims for insurance. If you want to use the framework, you can get the license for the solutions framework and you can use the solutions framework as a base layer, and then you can build your application over the base layer. And the third option is using Cosmos UI. With the recent releases, Pega has invested heavily in this Cosmos UI features. With Cosmos, you get a lot of brand new UI features. Cosmos has its two flavors. One as a traditional Cosmos and the other it uses React.js. I'm not going to explain about Cosmos in this entire video series, but definitely I'm going to make a separate video on using Cosmos UI. Here my decision will be I'm going to use the Pega base product as my base application. Next is framework or implementation application. I get two options here. I can either create it as a framework or an implementation application. First, let's look into what is framework. In the last video, we already saw briefly about framework application. Framework can be a flat layer that can hold the reusable code. Implementation, for every application which you want to build, definitely you need to have an implementation layer that can be built over either base product or it can be over the framework layer. So if you choose creating a framework application, it cannot be a standalone application. So definitely you need to create an implementation application that will be the second application over this framework application. If you choose not to use any framework application, then you can directly create an implementation application over the base product. Now, if you clearly look into the requirement and see if you really need a framework layer. For me, I feel I don't want to create any framework layer. Pega also do recommend that create the framework layer only when needed. Don't just create the framework layer for the future proof. Also keep a note that implementation application can include multiple build-on component applications, and you can also implement applications over any existing implementation application. So you can keep building over, and implementations can also act as a framework application. So that is the reason I'm just choosing it as an implementation application. So for the second question, my choice would be to have an implementation application. Now the next question is determine your enterprise application layer. Here we may get three options. One, to use your implementation directly on the organizational layer. Two, to have organization division and then implement over the division. Third, you can also have organization division unit and then implement your application over the unit layer. So what does this organization division and unit layer meant? All these three are data instances in Pega that helps to map your organizational structure. Let's take an example of A-Life Insurance. So A-Life Insurance is an organization. So I can directly map it A-Life to organization. They have 5 departments: marketing, claims, underwriting, legal and finance. All these 5 departments, I can directly map it to division. So they have 5 divisions in their organization. Let's say if they have some kind of sub areas or subdivisions under each division. Claims, if they have investigation department and payment department, then I can create units for investigation and payment. This can go on. In a very big organization, you can have multiple levels of hierarchy. You can have one organization, it can have multiple divisions. Divisions can have units. Then units also can have a lot of divisions, right? So how do we map it? Now a question is, can we only have 3 levels in any organization? You can have organization, division and unit. Under division, you can have multiple units and units can have multiple units that can have multiple units. So units can be divided into multiple units under different levels. In this requirement, this A-Life organization, they have a very small structure. They have an organization and just they have a departments. They don't have an unit structure. So for me, implementing an application over an unit structure is out of scope. That is why I presented you with only two pictures, implementing an application that is on the blue piece of cake over the organization. The second is over the division. Now we have to decide between these two options, either one. Now you have to think if you will really have some kind of reusable code under the division layer. Only then defining your division layer into your enterprise application structure may be a valid one. Otherwise, you don't want to have any division layer. Now, if you look at my A-Life organization, I don't have any kind of decision specific requirement. Of course, I have organizational requirement or organizational source code, for example, the logos or some organizational standards, which I can place it into the organizational layer. But I don't have any kind of source code or any kind of business requirement that is only specific to the division layer. Also, I'm going to create applications for a claims, and the division is also claims. I can place all the claims related stuff into the implementation layer. So I don't want to make it anything into the division layer and reuse across the division layer applications. In that way, I'm going to go with the first option. I'm going to implement my claims application directly over the organizational layer. You definitely have to do a brainstorm session on this and decide whether you need a division layer or unit layer. This is really critical for your application design. Once you design your application, start building your code, it will be really difficult to include your division layer at the later point of time. So at the start of the application creation itself, you should be aware of your enterprise application layer. Now that I have answers for all these questions, I know what will be my base application. It is going to be Pega base product. I know my application type. It's going to be implementation application. And I also know my enterprise application layer. It's going to be on the organizational directly. Now let's go to the Dev Studio and create our first application. So I just launched the Pega dev server. I'm going to log in with my username password. The username which I just created during the last operator ID video. It's going to be Prem rules, and Prem is going to play the LSA rule to implement the first application. Currently, the operator is pointed to the application Pega platform. You know the configuration where it is in the operator ID. The access group, it points to the Pega rules application. That is the Pega platform application. This is the base application which already exists in the system. Now we are going to create a new application. To create any new rule in Pega, you can use the create menu. From create menu, you can select the category and then you can create the rule. Application is also a rule that is part of application definition, but I would not recommend you to create an application rule using this option. Instead, what you can do is you can go to this application pick list, and from here you can use the new application wizard. This will open up a wizard that will help you with setting up your application for the first time. So use this new application that will open up the wizard. Now it asks the first question, what type of application do you want to build? You get two options. You can either build from scratch or you can use any existing application as your base application. First, I will check what I get from build from scratch. So use this option, continue. Here I get two options. Theme Cosmos, which is the traditional architecture, and Cosmos React, which uses React.js. Keep a note that I am using 8.7 version. The look and feel of the new application wizard may vary per Pega versions. If you are in lower versions, you may see different screens here. Currently with 8.7, if you want to build from scratch, you are restricted to use only this Cosmos application as your base application. I don't want to use Cosmos for my application. So I'll go back here and I will try to find the base application. Click on search all types. That will open up a field. Keep a note, this is an inverted triangle. So click here plus down arrow. That will list all the list of applications that can act as a base application. I want to use Pega platform or the Pega rules as my base application. So I'll use this option and then select use this application type. So my new application is going to use Pega rules or Pega platform's base product as the base application. Next is I'm going to provide a name for my application. Please do provide meaningful name that comes under naming standards. I'm going to name it as Claims App. I could have named it as Claims, but my division or the department is already Claims department. So I will just name it as the Claims App. Now you can directly go ahead and create an application, but I would not recommend to do that. Instead, use the advanced configurations here. This is where you can define your application structure as well as the class layer. First, let's look into the application structure. You have two options to use. You can either create this application as framework or you can create the application as implementation. By default, the application structure is selected as implementation. I also decided that I'm going to create it as an implementation application. So I'm going to keep it as such, but I will also show you how the class layers change when you use the application type as framework. Application ID, it's going to be the identifier for your application. I'm going to have Climbs app, and the version is follow standard software versioning. Is major minor patch. It's going to be 010101 because this is the first time I'm creating. So I'm going to leave it as default. You can select your base language. I'm going to just use EN_US, that is United States English. And now the organizational settings. You can map your organization into these organizational settings. So what will be my organization name here? I know it is going to be A-Life because I'm building Climbs application for A-Life organization. And the division is going to be Climbs. Unit, currently I don't have any unit in the requirement. You can also leave the unit like that. Just keep it unit. No problem with that. Next, class layers. You see how the class layer is formed. Remember the situation layer cake. We have our application directly implemented on the organizational level. So you have A-Leaf, Climbs app work. Pega expects the name to be short and crisp. That's why you have it as A-Leaf, but you can also change it to A-Life. That is the organizational name. And then application is Climbs app and the class group name is work. Don't worry about this class group, but every time whenever you create a new application using the wizard, you should be defining a work layer for that new application. Work layer is going to hold all your case instances. So Climbs is a case that is going to be part of this class group. For now, let's not go much detail into it. Let's come back here and define the class layer. You have an option here, generate division layer. If you use this option, then you will see the class layer is extended to organization, division, and then your application. It means application is implemented over the division layer. This is the second cake which we saw in the introduction. You can also generate unit layer. Then your application will be under organization. That will be the base cake layer, division, unit, and then you have your application over that unit layer. As we already know, unit is out of scope for our requirement. So we had two options. Either you can implement it directly over the organization or you can implement it over the division. And we already decided that we will not use the division into the class layer. We will just implement it over the organization. So I will disable this option. So the class layer is going to be A-Life, Climbs app, work. The application layer, it's directly onto the organization. These are all about the implementation. What if you have the application structure as framework? If you choose this option, what it does is framework, you cannot have a framework layer on a division level or a unit level. So it's going to be on the organizational level and you will have that FW into the class layer. You will see organizational -framework layer -application. This is going to be standard default structure if you try to create a framework application. I'm not going to create a framework application. I'm going to use the implementation, right? So I'm going to have my class layer as A-Life, Climbs app, work. So what is this class layer actually meant is, whenever you create source code, most of the source code, they go into the class layer. You have to define a class layer for your source code. If your source code or the work related source code is more application specific, then you can place it into the application class layer. If your source code is more organizational specific, for example, the logo or the organizational standards, then you can place the source code under this organizational layer. It follows a pattern like A-Life -Climbs app -work. The Climbs app inherits from the organizational. As you know from the cake, you know that implementation can reuse the rules or source code from the organizational layer or the base layer. In the coming videos also, we will look more into the inheritance path and how rule resolution picks up. If you still don't get the clear picture why we use this option, just go forward few videos, then come back. There you will get to know why we use this option. Now that I'm done with all my advanced configuration, whatever we did till now is I used Pega platform as the base application. I'm going to create an implementation application with the name Climbs app. I define my organizational settings as A-Life Climbs. And then my class layer, I just use the reusable layer of organization. I didn't use or I didn't generate any division or the unit layer. Now click as save and then click create application. This is going to create a new application for you. It not only creates an application, it's also going to create some supporting rules. A lot of source code will be generated by this wizard. Let's wait for a couple of seconds for the application to get created. And I see it's already created. So you see, Congratulations, Climbs app has been configured and it is now ready to use. I hope you remember during the operator ID creation video, I told you you can also create operator IDs during the application creation. From here, you can start creating new operator ID and then you can just click add. That will create a new operator. I will show you. I'm going to create a new operator called Pega. I'll give the access as administrator. You get two options here. Either you can give them the administrator access, which is like an admin access, or you can give them the author access group, which will be more like designing your application. For now, I'm going to give it as administrator. Click add. You see an error here because you need to enter a valid email address. I'm going to say alife.com. You should have @ and dot because it validated, and just click add. So Pega has automatically created a new operator here. You also see the password here. Now let's verify if the operator ID is successfully created. To do that, you can go to the Postgres admin console, and I have already written the query. I'm selecting py user identifier from data pr_operators. This is the table that holds the operator IDs. Now execute this query and then scroll down. Here you find mynopega@alife.com. So we have successfully created a new operator ID during the application creation. Now we can go to the app by using this button. Click go to the app. Now you see it is loading. So we are switching to the newly created app. My current app is Pega platform. Now I am switching to the Climbs app. As you can see, it is loading me Pega's App Studio. It is not loading me Dev Studio. It is loading me App Studio. Can you guess where this configuration will be? Definitely it should be tagged to the operator ID, but via access group. Let's check that also. I'm going to switch back to the Dev Studio. You can use this option and then switch to the Dev Studio. Here now I am into the Dev Studio. I can open my operator here and then check the access group. You see Pega has automatically added the access group to the operator who created the application. Since I created the application, I get the author access group for the Climbs app. You can click and open the access group, and from here it points to an application which is the mandatory configuration, and you also see the available portals, and the default portal is Pega Express. Pega Express equal to App Studio. Here I get access to Pega Express, which is the App Studio. I have access to developer portal, which is the Dev Studio. Prediction Studio, I can also switch to Prediction Studio. I also have access to Case Manager, Case Worker portal. These are the default end user portals which you can customize and provide to the end users. This you can launch it from this option. You have Case Manager and Case Worker. So you have access to 5 portals. I also need to get access to the admin studio. So how to add access to the admin studio is either you can update this access group, or you can create a new access group, or you can also update the Climbs app.administrators access group. I'm not going to only be the author for this application. I'm going to be the administrator for this application since I'm playing the lead system architect role. So what I'll do, I'll change the access group to Climbs app administrators. Now this also points to Climbs app application. So I'll delete the authors access group. Now I change my access group to administrators. Let's open the administrator access group and see the portal. You see with administrator access group, I get everything including the admin studio. I get admin studio, I get developer studio, I get app studio, I get prediction studio. But I'm going to enable developer studio as my default studio. Now I do a save here so that Climbs app administrators access group always points to the Climbs app application and the default portal is always developer. Now I will go back to my operator and then enable it as my default access group as Climbs app administrator. Now if I log out, log in, then I should have the Dev Studio as my default studio, and then rules. Now Dev Studio should be logging in. Yes, of course it is logging in, the Dev Studio, and my current application is Climbs app. Now that we have successfully created our first application, there are a lot of rules that got generated during the application wizard. We will check it in the next video.